Hey everybody, and Tony here with a review of Wagner's Tannhäuser, the Dresden version, in which the Venus is sung by a dramatic soprano and Walter von Vogelweide has his solo aria, which I saw at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. The conductor was Donald Runnicles, the production was done by Kirsten Harms, the sets, costumes, and lighting were done by Bernd Damowski and Inga Tim, the assistant director was Eva Maria Abelein, the choreographer was Silvana Schröder, and the chorus master was Raymond Hughes. Before I start off with this review, I would love to give a major shout out to a very good online friend, Dillon Haynes, aka Coloratura fan, for this really wonderful ticket. This gentleman gave it to me as a gift, and Dillon, if you're watching this video, I hope you enjoy my review of tonight's production of Tannhäuser. I definitely enjoyed my evening, and with that said, enjoy the review. With that out of the way, let's get on to what I thought about the production, costumes, singers, conducting, and chorus. My overall thoughts on the production was that it was rather interesting, and there were definitely some moments which stood out to me a lot. What's very noticeable about this particular production was the usage of all of these armors just floating around the stage. The opera basically starts off with someone in full armor flying down the stage as if though he were Alice falling down the rabbit hole in Alice in Wonderland, and he lands in a big pool full of young women who basically bathe with him. He takes off his armor as if to show that he has left the mortal world and has stepped into the world of Venusberg before he sees all of these images of Venus based on the very famous painting done by Sandro Botticelli, The Birth of Venus, before encountering the real Venus where he does it with her. The entire scene in Venusberg plays off like as if though this was the realm of the night, which I found really interesting, even though I would have loved to have a lot more scenery, which is definitely the same thing I can say about the different acts. After Tannhäuser's departure from Venusberg, we're then treated to some gargoyles flying around the stage, some souls in what seems to be purgatory or hell just crying out for salvation, and a young shepherdess wandering around the stage before they are all interrupted by the presence of knights on horses coming to basically take Tannhäuser back to the palace. The whole palace scene plays off with all of these armors floating around the stage, and the main contest with the Minnesänger plays it off really well, with each of them standing up to the podium, singing their songs, and we also have the chorus members dressed up in the medieval garb. And what's also noticeable about the final scene is that it seems to be taking place in what looks like a hospital for the very sick, where every patient is in a cot, and we even see Elisabeth and Wolfram just wandering where Tannhäuser is. And we even see Tannhäuser coming in looking a little bit older and a little bit more ragged than what he used to look like in the first few acts, before Elisabeth turns to Venus and Venus basically reverts back to Elisabeth. What's so striking about this production is that Venus and Elisabeth are pretty much the same woman. When Elisabeth is Venus, she basically wants pure bodily human contact love with Tannhäuser. She wants physical love. She wants to feel those physical sensations of what it's like to just be in love with a man and what it's like to consummate her feelings with him. As Elisabeth on Earth, she's basically sworn to love Tannhäuser as if though he is her own fiancé, and she's basically sworn to him through duty and through her role as a noblewoman in the aristocratic society, and she basically is meant to be chaste. So the juxtaposition between Elisabeth's chastity and Venus's physical want for contact love shows that this is basically Elisabeth in one person. And I thought that the costumes looked rather interesting as well. The costumes that really struck me the most definitely have to be the costumes worn by the Minnesänger, or the minstrel knights. They all wear the same set of armor to show that they are one clan, one family, and pretty much one society of minstrel singers. It shows their uniformity. It shows that they are a team. It shows that they're not only warriors, but they're also poets, musicians, and most importantly, singers. The other costume that really strikes me is that of Venus's and Elizabeth's costume. They both wear white and they both have blonde hair, but the only thing that's very different is that Venus wears her hair down, whereas with Elizabeth, she keeps her hair in either pigtails or she wraps it up in a bun. So overall, there were definitely a lot of interesting moments found in this entire production, even though I would have loved to have a lot more scenery. We could have had some castles here and there, we could have had some marble work, we could have had some trees and forests, and for Venusberg, I would have loved to see a lot more mythical elements being added, like we could have had some waterfalls, some streams, and just a lot of nature in general. But despite all that, I definitely have to say that this production was interesting in its own special way. Now we get to the singers, and I thought that this was Peter Seiffert's best night as Tannhäuser. I have also seen this gentleman as Lohengrin, and he continues to show no signs of faltering whatsoever. His voice, even though he's in his 60s, continues to be as strong, powerful, sturdy, steely, and really awesome and focused as ever. His high notes maintained that clarion precision, and his interpretation of Tannhäuser was very visceral and really, really inviting. You could definitely feel Tannhäuser's lust. You can feel his want for love, and you can also feel his need for redemption, and you can also feel his guilt when you go to the final act of the opera. You could feel everything just pour out of the singer, and it was just so magnificent. Herr Seiffert showed no signs of faltering. He showed no signs of cracking. He showed no signs of giving up. He was visceral, he was driven, and he was a very committed singing actor, as he's always been. He's even sung this role for a good amount of time. I would say about 20 to 15 years, and he continues to show us that he is a very great singing actor, really pulling out all the stops with this particular role, and he was just wonderful from beginning to end. Singing the roles of Venus and Elisabeth was Ricarda Merbet, a soprano whose career I've been following for quite some time. When I heard that Ricarda Merbet not only sang Elisabeth, one of her signature roles, but also Venus, I was both excited yet rather skeptical for her. This is mostly due to the fact that Ricarda Merbet started off with a lot of the lyric soprano roles before transitioning to some true spinto soprano roles, and nowadays she specializes in the dramatic soprano repertoire. I also heard her as Helena from Richard Strauss's Die Ägyptische Helene, also at the Deutsche Oper Berlin, and I thought she did a very good job. But hearing her as Venus and Elisabeth, even though she did a very good job with her characterization and for really singing this part, there were definitely some caveats to her performance. And at times, the high notes that she produced kind of sounded a little bit hooty and squally. And the way she started off with Dich teure Halle, there were times that the first few notes sounded a little bit on the squally side. But her efforts got a lot better throughout the opera, especially in the final act, where her rendition of Allmächtige Jungfrau was very, very moving, even though there were some hints of squalliness. But this is mostly due to the fact that she has sung a really, really wide range of roles for a very long time, so I'm pretty sure that it did take a really big toll on her voice. And when it comes to singers singing Venus and Elisabeth, we have at our disposal a lot of the great singers of the past who specialize in both of these roles. Granted, there has been no shortage of Wagnerian sopranos who specialized as both Venus and Elisabeth. Singers like Helena Braun, Margaret Harshaw, Astrid Varnay, Birgit Nilsson, and Ludmila Vorakova come to mind. My personal favorite voices for Venus definitely have to be Helena Braun, Erna Schlüter, Margaret Harshaw, Marta Mödel, Rossi Deli, Astrid Varnay, Ludmila Vorakova, Irma Esenyi, Rita Gore, Christa Ludwig, Sigrid Kehl, Janice Martin, Waltraud Meyer, and even the likes of Ljoba Braun, and what we have today with the likes of Michelle de Young and Milena Butaeva. And when it comes to Elisabeth, I really love voices like Hilde Konecny, Annelies Kuppa, Elisabeth Grömer, Elisabeth Schwarzkopf, Greb Rövenstein, Leonie Risenek, Hildegard Hillebrecht, Birgit Nilsson, Heather Harper, Nancy Gustafson, Deborah Voigt, and what we have today with the likes of Marina Poplovskaya and Anna Schwanevims. I definitely love those voices because I felt like, at least in my opinion, some of their voices are a lot more focused, especially when it comes to the note that they sing. And when it comes to Venus, I really love a round, rich, almost Zwischenfach-like voice, as opposed to Elisabeth's more spinto soprano emission. But despite some of the shortcomings that Ricarda Merbet had as both Venus and Elisabeth, I still have to give her loads of credit in terms of her being a very fine singing actress. With Venus, she was able to give her glamour, her beauty, and that sense of really luring Tannhäuser to her. And with Elisabeth, she was able to give her nobility, her chastity, and her fortitude, which I thought she pulled off very, very well, as to be expected, because Elisabeth was also one of the roles that she has sung for many, many years. I would say that she sung Elisabeth for about 10 to 15 years. So even though Frau Merbet had some caveats here and there, her interpretation as both Venus and Elisabeth was quite masterful in terms of how she was able to play both of these characters, which is definitely a hard job. The other gentleman who stole the show really had to be James Rutherford as Wolfram von Eschenbach. I also saw this gentleman about 3 years ago when he sang the role of Mandrika from Richard Strauss's Arabella in Amsterdam. And hearing him as Wolfram, I thought he did a very wonderful job, even though there were some moments where he sounded a little bit on the stentorian side. But despite all that, he's still a very focused and really fine musician, and his rendition of O du mein holder Abendstern was really, really well done. He was able to shade his voice so well that he made this rendition of Wolfram's prayer really poignant and so wonderfully sung. And I really love the chemistry he has with Ricarda Merbet as the Elisabeth. He's basically like a big brother to Elisabeth, protecting her from all harms. And his chemistry with Ricarda Merbet as the Elisabeth was just really, really palpable. You could feel that Wolfram is like a big brother to Elisabeth and not just her best friend for life. With that said, I definitely have to say that James Rutherford was a very wonderful Wolfram, even though he had some moments of his voice sounding a little bit on the stentorian side. But despite all that, he was still able to do a very great job as Wolfram, and I would really love to hear a lot more of this wonderful Helden bariton. Ain Angar was a noble, strong, and really awesome Landgraf Hermann. The moment this gentleman entered the stage, my breath was completely held tight. First of all, I really love the tall presence he gave to this Landgrave. He had the presence and the strength of a Bengal tiger, and he had the voice of a powerful lion. He was able to make Landgraf Hermann a very noble, strong, and a very focused father figure to Elisabeth and pretty much to all the Minnesänger of the court. He was just so wonderful as Landgraf Hermann, my jaw practically dropped when he entered the stage. His characterization was very masterful, his singing was very well focused, and he just stole the show as well. And he was just a very great singer all throughout. I also followed his career for quite some time, as I also saw him as Gremin from Tchaikovsky's Evgeny Onegin, and even heard him online as Fazelt from Das Rheingold and a lot of other productions. And what more can I say about Herr Unger? He was able to embody Landgraf Hermann with a sturdy, strong, and powerful presence. He was just so handsome with his well-chiseled face and bearded countenance, and he had a very tall and powerful presence on stage. I definitely bought him in this particular role, and what more can I say about him? He was just magnificent. The other standouts definitely had to be Clemens Bieber's superbly sung Walter von Vogelweide, in which he was able to sing with lyrical precision, especially with his solo aria. Noel Bowley's burly, masculine, and quite muscular sounding Bitterolf, in which he was able to provide him a lot of machismo, yet also that virile charm. Alexia Bodnar-Schutz's finely tuned Reima von Sveta, and Jörn Schörner's handsomely sung Heinrich der Schreiber. And when you put all these four wonderful singers together, you have a great vocal combination. I also have to give loads of kudos to Heidi Stober's superbly sung Shepherd Girl. Well, originally he's a shepherd boy, but in this production, she's a shepherd girl. She was able to bring out a certain frailty to this character and a certain innocence, thus making her characterization just really, really believable. And what more can you expect from Heidi Stober? She was an expert in embodying a lot of these youthful characters thanks to her well-focused, lovely lyric soprano voice and her really involving stage presence. So overall, I definitely felt like the singing was really, really good all around, with the standouts in terms of the main characters being Peter Seiffert's powerfully sung Tannhäuser, James Rutherford's fine and stentorian Wolfram, and of course, Ain Anger's handsomely sung Landgraf Hermann. And in terms of the minor roles, we have some really great work done by Jörg Schörner, Clemens Bieber, Alexia Bodnar-Schutz, and Noel Bowley, and of course, the wonderful Heidi Stober. So, what more can I say about the singers? They did a very good job all throughout, contributing each of their efforts to make this production of Tannhäuser come alive, and the conducting done by Maestro Donald Runnicles was really well done as always, as Wagner is his forte. Everyone went together, from the chorus to the orchestra to the singers. There was not one sour note to be found, and everyone really gave it their all. So overall, this production of Tannhäuser was interesting thanks to some really great singing, most notably from Unger, Rutherford, and Seiffert, and the great conducting done by Maestro Donald Runnicles. And for those of you who watched this production of Tannhäuser, what did you think of it? Did you love this production of Tannhäuser in its entirety? Did you feel like there was a singer who stood out to you so much? Or was there an element of this production, or did you feel like there was a singer that did not really live up to your standards? Comment below and let me know. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in tomorrow where I review yet another Tannhäuser production, but this time it's the Paris version at the Staatsoper im Theater, starring Marina Prudinskaya as the Venus. So until then, good night everybody.